Shalom and welcome to a very special edition of Parasha Talk. I'm Rabbi Malamet, usually from Highland Park, New Jersey, the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation on Shemet. But today we are all gathered here in New York City at Anshe Chesed, the home of Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky, Rabbi of Anshe Chesed in New York City. And we have Rabbi Barry Chesler here of Solomon Schechter Day School of Long Island. This is the synod of Parasha Talk. We have gathered in person to have a reunion of Parasha Talks live.
It's words, Dine Mamonot Bishlosha.
Exactly.
We're baked in to judge cases of commercial law.
We not only we're beit in, but we're a beit chaverim, beit rachamim.
Indeed.
Beit house of mercy. As people know, we are a beit din consists of 3 rabbis, and we could excommunicate people. So
That's a nice segue into the Parsha.
Right. But before we do that, we just want to give a shout out. I would like to give a shout out on behalf of my colleagues to Cantor Mike and Lisa Weiss, who are going to be honored this week at our synagogue. And we are wishing them Mazel Tov. Sunday, March 3rd is our gala. And of course, we want to thank all of the people that are watching and listening to us as they prepare for Shabbat in various ways. And we, of course, are thinking about our friends and family in Israel, day 143 of the conflict, 142.
140. We're on Sunday.
We're Sunday?
Sunday, yeah.
We are thinking about the hostages and praying for their release, praying
Right.
that something, and you got your
My t-shirt, my shul outside has a big poster with all of the from the original list of all the hostages. Of course, more than 100 of them have been returned, but to bring them home now is my t-shirt. I picked this t-shirt up in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. Machzirim otam habayta achshav, bring them home now.
Bring them home now. That's our prayer. This week's Parasha Ki Tissa, it breaks up the Parshiot at the end of the book of Shmot. The Parshiot at the end of Shmot, the 5 Parshiot, which is Truma, Tetzaveh, Ki Tissa, Vayakel, and Pekudei. For the most part, they deal with the sanctuary, the structure, and the clothing. Last week, Parsha Tetzaveh, lots to do with the clothing and the different accoutrements of the Kohen Gadol. And we have some unfinished business at the beginning of this parsha, namely funding of the sanctuary and the incense altar, things that seem in the sequence to be the kind of footnote.
And in particular, by the way, also the names of the artists.
The names of the artist, Betzalel
Ben Ohaliab and Betzalel ben Ori ben Hur and Ohaliab ben Achisamach. Lovely midrash. Betzalel is from Ben Ori ben Hur, Lamatei Yehuda. He's from the tribe of Judah, and by midrashic tradition, it's not clear in the Torah. Hur is Miriam's husband, so he's Miriam's grandson, Moses's nephew. Super estimable and lineage. Ohaliab ben Achisamach is from the tribe of Dan, the least estimable. So the midrash says you need the whole society. You need the fancy people and the humble people working together. And everybody, Ohaliab is also an artist, even though he's said to be from a very humble tribe.
Okay, so I'm going to set this up. We have the instructions. They're all laid out. We have the artist. We have a small command for Shabbat. We're not going to talk about that, although we could spend lots and lots of time talking about it.
Let's not talk about it. Let's sing it on Shabbat.
On Shabbat, okay? And then, Vayiten el Moshe kechalato ledaber ito. When he finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, Shnei luchot ha'idut. God gave Moses the 2 tablets of the pact, stone tablets inscribed with the finger of God. So that's our scene. We're starting. God gives Moses the 2 tablets, and they're there. This is the moment. This is a great moment. It's like Moses at the top of the mountain. The symbolism is that it's the most information that he could get about God, and God kind of hands him 2 tablets. These 2 tablets, which are going to be the first tablets, are God's tablets.
Well, it is a peak experience.
Yeah, okay. And then the people are waiting. So we go right now into the crisis. The crisis of this moment is that the people are waiting. Vayar ha'am ki voshesh Moshe. The people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain. They gathered up on Aaron, and you know what happens? They tell Aaron, we need something. We need something to look at and make us a God. Kum aseh lanu Elohim. We want an Elohim to walk before us. Because this guy Moses, lo yadanu, ma hayalanu, me hayalo. We don't know what happened to Moses.
So it's interesting that it actually doesn't say that they want to look at it. Just that they want it to go before them.
Yeah, they want something to follow. Okay. So Aaron gets them to part with all their jewelry, and Aaron takes it from their hands, and he makes Vayara Aaron, he builds an altar. And he says, tomorrow we'll have a holiday.
But it says, Chag Ladonai Machar. So you pointed out that they ask for Elohim, and Aaron is giving them some sort of Elohim.
Yeah.
But Aaron, like judging Aaron's job, what he's done right, what he's done poorly, you could argue that Aaron is trying to keep them in line because he wants them to worship Yud He Vav He.
Yeah.
He wants them to worship the true God. Aaron maybe is in an impossible situation. The people are rioting, and he doesn't know what to do. But he's trying by saying Chag Ladonai Machar is to say, let me keep you connected to Hashem and not lose your bearings completely.
The people wake up, they make sacrifices. Vayeshevam lechol, they eat the chateau, they drink. Vayakum letzachek, and they get up to play hockey.
No, I think it's mixed dancing. That's what they practice.
Letzachek, they're enjoying themselves with each other. It's different from the Revelation.
So they don't say that it's an orgy, but that's what we're left to think,
Well,
right?
so
It's saying, our translator is very clear. They rose to dance.
but it was mixed dancing. That's the
Mixed
part that's
dancing.
important.
Okay.
But it's also worth pointing out here that we have a similar scene at the end of the 40 years of wandering at Baal Peor, where there's also the same kind of activity. And so the Bnei Israel's experience of the Midbar, the wilderness, was bracketed by these two orgiastic festivals dedicated to the worship of other gods.
Okay.
And it does always fall out on or about Mardi Gras. And here we are at Mardi Gras. We just a week or so ago had Mardi Gras, and that's what the people were doing.
God is really angry and says, Lech red, go down, ki shichet amcha, your people who you brought out of the land, they've acted basely. And Moses staves off God's anger.
But before we get to, it's so important, I think, sometimes to read the Torah out loud as you did, because we notice things that we would not otherwise have noticed. And God here emphasizes that Moses brought the people out of the land of Egypt, which helps us understand their original concern that Moses is God and they need someone who could represent the one who brought them out of Egypt, who clearly isn't God from the people's point of view.
So we talked before we started recording, and it's one of the ways of wrestling with this passage. What exactly is the terrible thing? Are they disloyal to Hashem? Are they in anxiety about Moses' role? And is the calf some representation of the invisible God? Is the calf some representation of the leadership power that Moses had fulfilled and now they think is gone? It's a rich passage that admits, I think, of no one single answer. Several of these things are possible.
So Moses staves off God's anger and beseeches God, why destroy these people? Let not your anger blaze forth against the people. Let not the Egyptians say, I'm reading verse 12, chapter 32, it was with evil intent that he delivered them, only to kill them off in the mountains. And then it's the clincher, verse 13, Zechor LaAvraham, LiYitzchak, LiYisrael. Remember your servants Abram, Isaac, and Israel, how you swore to them by yourself and said to them, I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars of heaven. So Moses is invoking God's first kind of promise And even at the burning bush, when God reveals himself to Moses the first time, he says, I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He says, I'm holding on to this. I'm holding on to the idea that you have a connection between yourself and our ancestors. And you got to remember that. Don't destroy them. Don't destroy them. And then, so God relents. Okay, only the people that sin will be destroyed.
Well, so that also raises a curious phenomenon, because if only the people that sinned are destroyed, then what was Moses' concern? Did he think everyone should have been killed? That everyone was guilty, even though God apparently only found a small number of them guilty?
I think Moses has got God's number here, because Moses understands that the way that God works is that when God is disappointed with how things turn out, he destroys them. Right? So the world creates turns out to be bad. So God says, I got to start off with a new world. So he finds Noah, and he promises that he won't destroy the world with Noah. But here he has his tactic is to find a people, make a family out of the people, find a person, make a family out of the person, make a people out of the family, and sees that the family ends up not so good. So he says, I'll start over again, and I'll choose you, Moses, to be the person who leads the family. Moses has nothing doing. You promised our ancestors, you got to keep the promise. It's amazing.
It is absolutely amazing. I think you're on target here, because God is saying, let me at him, and knows that he invites Moses into the argument, right? Just as with Abraham, God invites Abraham into the argument about the fate of Sodom and Amorah. It's as if here, God and Moses both know the pattern, and Moses, God says, now let me be, that my anger may blaze forth against them. Well, why would God have to say that to Moses? Let me be? So when Moses persuades God that this is a moment for, even though there's the bit about what will the Egyptians say, which sort of seems like a
appeal to vanity.
Appeal to vanity, a silly thing. But what you said, Elliot, I think is really quite powerful. This people has a history. It has a covenant, and don't give up on the history. There's a terrible thing that's happening here, and Moses is still up at the top of the mountain. He doesn't know exactly the dimensions of what's going on. He's going to learn that in a second. But it is a vote of confidence and a vote to stick with an important ongoing history. And when God says, Moses, history's over, let's start again with you, Moses has nothing doing.
Nothing doing. It's in a way, it's the greatness of Moses here, who's enabling God to really be God. And this might sound kind of weird to our ears, in the sense that God is also learning here. I mean, we normally don't think of God as getting educated, but Moses is educated.
Right. Well, so as long as we're allowing for multiple interpretations, we have a colleague, Rabbi Bill Berman, who's a parent at my school, Schechter School of Long Island, and was a rabbi for many years in Comac, New York on Long Island. And he suggested that part of this is reverse psychology on God's part, is that what God needs to do is get Moses to take ownership and leadership of the people, because Moses himself is ready to give up on them. And God's role here is to get Moses to recognize that these are in fact his people, and that he has to shepherd them. And God puts it on himself, so to speak, in order to let Moses grow himself.
Okay. So a civil war happens. There's a real conflict in the camp at that point. And then when we get to chapter 33, God says, look, I'm taking you up. We're going up from here to the land that I promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm going to send an angel messenger, etc. El eretz avad chalav udvash, verse 3, to the land flowing with milk and honey. Because I'm not going with you. I'm not going to be inside the people. You're stiff-necked people. Because if I go among you, I'm going to destroy you. You're just going to irritate me so much. You're going to anger me so much that my anger will blaze forth and I will destroy you. The people hear this. How do they hear it? We don't know. Vayitabalu. They hear this and they go into mourning. And this problem of God not being with them, I think it's the threat of abandonment, the threat of a divine abandonment. And they can't handle it. Moses takes his tent out of the camp. We have that. And I want to just turn, I know we're going through this very quickly, but we turn to the next chapter, chapter 34, where it seems as if Moses says, look, I'm not going to take them further until you reveal yourself to me. And this passage is really difficult. We're going to try and break through this passage where Moses said, look, I need you to show me your presence. Har'eni et kvodecha. Har'eni na et kvodecha. Verse 18, chapter 33. And God says, I will make all my goodness pass before you. I will proclaim before you the name God and the grace that I grant and the compassion that I show. And already we don't understand what's going on here.
So do we assume that in this passage, in 33 from 12 to the end of the chapter, God takes back that claim that I won't go in your midst? Like, I won't go in your midst. You make me so mad, and when I get mad, bad things happen. It's kind of a nuclear reaction. And so God said, that's the way it's going to be. And Moshe says, again, nothing doing. Unless we have the intimate connection, we're not going.
Right, but God here is also being hyper literal, so he's not gonna go in their midst. When the denouements could be, the Ohel Moedis could be moved outside the camp. And so that God will actually be outside the camp rather than within the camp. So he's not in their midst, but he still has not abandoned them.
Well,
But I wanna just draw our attention to verse 19, which the English doesn't do it justice, because in Hebrew it says, V'chanoti et asher achon, v'yichamti et asher arachem, which as Eliot read, I will proclaim before you the name Lord and the grace that I grant and the compassion that I show. But in the Hebrew, this echoes God's identification at the burning bush. The ehaya asher ehaya. It's a similar construction. And it's a reminder here, I think, that just as God was at the bush with Moshe, he's still here.
Okay, so let's now go to the point where God makes this personal revelation to Moses. That's chapter 34. We recall that with the first set of commandments, God chiseled them out, God carved them, God kind of wrote on them and gave them. Here, God is saying to Moses, Psal lecha shnei luchot avanim, you carve 2 tablets of stone like the first. I will inscribe upon the tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. Okay? And be ready, be ready in the morning, and in the morning, come up to Mount Sinai, present yourself there to me on the top of the mountain. Okay, so it's pretty clear. You're going to have an overnight on the mountain, and then it's basically right at daybreak, right at sunrise, you're going to go up to the mountain on the top. You're going to stand on the top of the mountain, the meeting of heaven and earth, basically. No one else should come up with you. No onlookers, nobody. The mountain is empty of people, no one else, and even animals, the flocks, the herds, no, nothing. It's going to be, a sterile zone, okay? Moses carved the 2 tablets of stone, like the first, and then early in the morning, he went up to Mount Sinai as the Lord commanded him. That's what, taking these 2 stone tablets with him, they're empty. The Lord came down in a cloud, okay, and now in Hebrew, Vayered Adonai be'enan. God comes down in a cloud. Vayityatzeh Mosham, and he stays there with him. Now, this is where it gets complicated. Okay, I'm going to read it with a beat or 2 of silence. He comes down in the cloud. Vayityatzeh Mosham. He stays with him there. Vayikra b'shem Adonai. So it says, and he called in the name of God. So who's calling? Who's responding? What's going on here? How do you understand?
This is the there are some things that are in doubt because you don't know the facts, and there are some things that are in doubt because the facts are never sufficient to answer the question. This is the latter kind, the complication of this story. Just before, at the end of 33, when God says, well, Moshe says to God, I need to see your presence. God said, I will bring my goodness before you, v'karati b'shem Adonai, and I will proclaim the name of the Lord. So it seems at one level that God has come down to Moses to proclaim his own name, proclaim God's own name, to reveal something to Moses that Moses needs to know, that Moses needs to experience if this is going to go further. So one possible way to read the story, to read the verse that you just said, or translate the verse that you just said, in that frame, God comes down in the cloud, and now Moses has been told, "V'nitzavta li sham al rosh hahar." Moses had been told, "Now you present yourself to me." So the yityatsev verb sounds like it's the fulfillment of what Moses was told to do. So God comes down in a cloud. So Moses stands with him there, and now vayikra b'shem Adonai. On the basis of 33, where it says v'karati b'shem Adonai, I think it's God proclaims something about the divine nature. But it could be, instead, Moses invokes the divine presence.
Yeah. So I have this picture of, like, this science fiction, like a beam, okay? That's like the cloud, and there's like this beam, and there's like a tractor beam. God and Moses, they're in one column of light, let's say. And whereas before God says, I will proclaim the name of God, here, in a way that is consistent with a lot of oppositional behavior that Moses has and other leading biblical characters, that rather than do what the Bible says he does, Moses is going to proclaim God's name.
Okay.
So Moses is saying God's name because this is the moment of contact. This is the moment, wait. This is the moment that the two are together. And so I read it with a kind of pause that it's a moment that lasts, for who knows how long. It could have been an instant, it could have been an hour, it could have been hours. And it could be a moment in which, Moses is in this meditative kind of trance where he is receiving all the transmission. He's receiving all the transmission of God. It takes 2 seconds to transmit megabytes, gigabytes of information. He's got the best Wi-Fi in the world. He's got the best Wi-Fi in the world. God is transmitting gigabytes of information in this kind of, light connection between Moses and God, and Moses gets it. And Moses proclaims the name of God. And then what happens is, after Moses proclaims the name of God, it's Moses that says, Adonai, Adonai.
Okay, so I want to offer a slightly different interpretation. I thought you were going in the right direction. But then you'll ask me. So in scholarly circles, the four-letter name of God, Yud-Hey-Vav-Hey, is considered God's proper name. That's a proper noun. That's God's name. And Elohim is kind of a generic name. So I think, borrowing from mystic circles, that God's name actually begins with El Rachum Chan, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed. And Adonai here is kind of a nickname, and the name is filled out. That it's not what you think it is. It's El Erech Rachum V'Chan Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed V'Yemet Noser Chesed La'alafim Nosei Avon V'Pesha, and then it's not clear how far we should go with it. Is God's name only the merciful part, or does it include the punishment part at the end? I think that's a matter of conjecture.
So this is really interesting in multiple ways. One of which is, it is sometimes attractive to read. This is a modern reading. The philosopher Franz Rosenzweig, the German philosopher who died in 1929, he wanted to say that revelation is not content; it is only presence. And you can sort of see how a passage like this would work if read in that way. So Golden Calf has happened, a terrible rupture, a restoration has happened. God says to Moshe, I'm going to give you the intimate experience that you need to go on to know that this is not over. We're not, we're not going to separate here. I'm not going to kill everybody. History's not coming to an end. And it could be that it was just the presence, and Moses' response is, my goodness, Adonai, Adonai, in all your excellence, you are a God of forgiveness. And the experience, the human experience of divine presence gives that human the ability to go forward. Now, I want to ask, this is, I mean,
So I want to just, I want to underscore that reading. I think that this is a human response. This is not God speaking. This is Moses speaking. What you're saying is that this is Moses relating the content of the gigabytes that were transmitted to him.
and this is what the people really need.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, okay, I'm gonna guess that most of our Parasha Talk faithful are
Loyal fans.
loyal fans. You guys need to come through on the merch here a little bit.
We need to come for, we have our t-shirt.
But I'm gonna guess that most of our Parasha Talk listeners are familiar with Jewish liturgy, and we know this passage, of course, is we say it on Yom Kippur, we say it on fast days, we say it on holidays when the Torah is taken out. And we, of course, place a period in the middle of the sentence that changes the meaning. Because what it is that this passage says is, I am tremendously merciful, I am mostly merciful, I am totally faithful, Erech Apayim, patient, Rav Chesed, abundantly kind, Ve'emet, totally faithful, Notzer Chesed la'alafim, for 1,000 generations I keep track of my kindness, Nosei Avon, I forgive, Avon v'fesha v'chata'a, I forgive all kinds of iniquity and wrongdoing and mistakes, V'nakeh, and we, Jewish liturgy puts a period after cleanse, but the thing is that changes the meaning of the sentence. What the sentence actually means semantically is, I'm tremendously faithful, tremendously kind, thousands of generations of kindness, but I want you to know, I'm gonna get you in the end. There is gonna be punishment in the end. There cannot be no punishment. If you want a God of justice, that's one of the things that we want out of religion. We want the claim of justice. Then there kind of does have to be punishment. And so I ask you two, I ask the world out there to think about this. What is the audacity and what is the religious takeaway from the fact that Jewish tradition has repunctuated this verse to mean the opposite?
I think it's absolutely fascinating. You know, this is a kind of discussion that we have in you know, the introduction to whatever the theology or philosophy classes. You know, they show how this sentence actually does have some kind of transition and transformation through the course of Tanakh. Take, for example, the book of Jonah, which recasts this in a different way and kind of lops off, you know, all the difficult stuff. And so it really says, look, you know, the way that the people perceive God, the way that we experience that part of reality, first of all, it's transformed. And second of all, we focus in on the compassion, because the punitive anger is something that none of us can stand up to.
So I think the rabbis recognize, unlike some other people, that the God of the Torah, the God of the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, is actually a God of love. And he's not solely a God of justice. And while I agree with you, Jeremy, that punishment is necessary, punishment cannot be meaningful without the possibility of redemption. And the repointing of the verse suggests that there is a promise of redemption, that you can sin and you can be punished and life will go on and you can restore your relationship with God.
Well, let me ask it in a different way, because this is such a, you know, the verse is so prevalent in the liturgy, especially liturgy of the high holidays, but we also have it on the Chagim. We recite it when the Torah comes out of the Ark. So what is the effect of saying it? What is the effect of repeating it all the time during Slichot, for example? And what is the effect of saying it? Are we, the way we're reading it, the way I want to read it here is saying, this is Moses's reaction. This is not what God is saying. Moses is saying that, and so when the congregation then in liturgy, in the experience of Tefillah, says it once, says it twice, says it 3 times, they're recalling Moses, and they're kind of bringing it back to God.
Well, I think it goes further than that, because there's a pedagogical element in it. We see God here as being merciful and compassionate, and it's to instruct us that we also have to be merciful and compassionate. It's not enough to have a God of compassion if there are not human beings who are compassionate as well.
There's a Talmudic passage which leans to the other reading, not Moses' response, it leans to, and all of these are possible. The ambiguity of the passage is one of the things that makes it so rich. That God is Vayit Yatzevi, Vayered Adonai Be'anan, Vayit Yatzevi Mosham, and the Talmud says in like the literary and religious creativity is just electric. It means that God put on a talit like a shaliach tzibur, wrapped himself in the cloud like wrapped himself in a talit, and says to Moshe, listen, whenever you're in trouble, here's what I want you to say.
Yeah.
And Adonai Adonai al Rachum B'Chanuni. And so when I think of that piece of Agadah, what it means to me is, listen, we've been through a lot worse than this before, right? You and I went through the golden calf, and we managed to make it through that.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that you did, whatever trouble you're in now, we're gonna get through this too. And I forgive you, and you're gonna access that hope. Because like when we're in trouble, look, I mean, we've all been in difficult, personal relationships, pastoral relationships. Somebody just came to me yesterday in the shul. We spent some time together pastorally in a real tremendous crisis, real terrible crisis. And you can run to a place of despair. And that piece of Agadah, that rabbinic usage from the Talmud and Tractate Rosh Hashanah of this passage says, if I made it through the golden calf, we can make it through whatever you're in now. Hang in there, buddy.
All right, we just have a couple of minutes. We can't end the parsha without the way the parsha ends, which is, it's so stunning. Vayehi beredet Moshe me'ar Sinai. Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and the two tablets are with him. Shnei luchot ha'edut, the testimony, are in his hands, and it says lo yada ki karan or panav bedabro ito. Moses was not aware that the skin of his face was radiant since he had spoken with him. It's like he's glowing. It's like, I don't know what this.
He's radioactive.
He's radioactive, right? So God has beamed on him, and Moses is glowing. He's like he's set on fire, right? He's literally on fire.
He's a soul on fire.
He's a soul on fire. Okay, so Aaron sees this, and people were scared, right? They saw Moses' face was radiant. They shrank. They were terrified flowing close to him. So Moses called out to them, and Aaron, the chieftains, blah, 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 blah. And when Moses finished speaking with them, he put a veil over his face. You want to comment on that?
Yes, this is one of the most stunning passages in the Torah, because first of all, we could ask why he needs the veil, but we're running out of time for that. So what I would like to suggest is that Moses veiling himself makes him like God. So even though Moses went up the mountain, he doesn't quite come down the mountain, because Moses is never going to be seen by a human being again after he puts the veil on. He only takes the veil off when he is in the presence of God. When we go back to the beginning of the golden calf, they want a God to go before them because that man Moses is not here.
Okay.
Well, Moses comes back, but not completely. And now he's even more like God because he is veiled.
That's incredibly complicated, because their reliance on Moshe at that point, at the beginning of this parasha, is what leads them down in their panic to do something terrible.
Yeah.
And so maybe this whole experience has made it worse. I want to just reflect on for a moment from the interior spiritual. Moses had a spiritual experience which is really incommunicable. He can't share it with his fellow human beings. And there's a way in which he can only share it with God. Sometimes I like this image that God is the one who knows me better than I know myself. God really is inside my heart, or inside my mind, inside my spirit. And this could be a metaphor or a figure for the way you really only take off your veil when you're with Hashem. In human communication, in human societies, we're always going to have a little bit of veiling.
I just want to say that, we talk about the veils, and would you equate the veil with the curtain in the ark? The curtain in my ark is a veil.
Mm-hmm.
And we open it, and It's hard not to make the connection here.
You mean literally the curtain in your ark in Highland Park?
Yeah.
I thought you meant my conception is a
So
veil.
then the question is, when we open the ark in the synagogue, do we dare to see God?
Exactly. And so what we're doing with Audacity is, yes, we are,
Yeah.
because we do, you know.
I have to have one comment based on something that Jeremy said. So Martin Buber has this arresting idea that God is closer to you than your own skin, which fit in very well with the idea that God knows you better than you know yourself. And it's always good to quote Martin.
Nice, always good. It's always good to end with Martin Buber. We're at the end of our time. It's been a joy to be together in person as we recorded this Parsha Talk. We're thinking again, the hostages, the war, everybody, Am Yisrael, and hoping that the study of Torah can give people comfort and maybe diversion, but also insight and thinking. And of course, maybe this will shape the thinking that people have as they approach a very complicated Parsha. Thank you so much. It's been great. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Great to see you. And see you next week on the next edition of Parsha Talk.